Hey everyone, Richard here from Design and Built. In this episode, we're going to be tearing down my near-complete Barra-powered 4580 right back to the frame. We're going to cover a heap of stuff along the way, including the installation of some coil tower braces, weld off, and yep, you guessed it, some more laser cut bracketry. Let's get into it. Teardown begins. I'm outsourcing a few bits and it's now a bit of a project management exercise, so I guess the cab is going to take the longest with the bodywork, so that's got to go first, and then I've got another few weeks to work on the chassis, the back end of the fuel system, and then yeah, we can send the chassis off for blasting and painting, and I'm going to paint a few bits at home as well. Let's get this show on the road. So when I do this, I'm trying to be as organized as possible. I've got tubs for the interior, tubs for the engine bits, tubs for the other bits as well, and then putting all the bolts back into the boxes. So the idea is just be organized, don't lose anything, and then make assembly easy. Stripped back and ready to take the cab off. The cab is off and there's a bit of work that I have to do to it before I send it off to paint. So I've got to put some crush tubes in the seat mount, so I've got to drill out a fair few holes and weld in some crush tube. I've also got to tidy up a lot of it and then weld the trans tunnel from the bottom, and just stuff that I've sort of been putting off until I knew the cab was going to be off. So there's a fair bit. Another thing I'm planning on doing is just preempting some wiring, run some wires up the windscreen as well. So I'll punch some holes up through there. "12 crush tubes, how good?" So that's it, job done on my end. The cab is ready to go off to bodywork. Quickly, I just nutserted this down, but everything else is pretty much the same as you saw it. So it's gonna get some body filler. In case you're wondering how I've been transporting the FJ cab around, just bloody chuck around the ute, mate. The cab is off and has been taken away to do bodywork. So the next step is to start pulling down the rest of the car. So today the plan is to pull apart the motor and the front end. I'm still actually nipping up some stuff on the rear, but I don't need the front of the car anymore. So that's all going to come apart today. Let's get into it. Killing it, George.
Don't trust me with that.
We've got Stacey, who's a qualified boilie from SS Custom Welding, just getting the welder dialed in to weld everything off. Pretty lucky to have him. And we've got George here on the qualified grinder, that's right. So we're just cleaning up everything before we weld off. Really lucky to have them here today, and it's just making everything a lot quicker. Quick little one I haven't shown you on previous videos, but I banged in an extra slider support there just to make it a bit stronger. Obviously I've done the same on the driver's side as well. So we've got 3 supports per slider now. I've got these coil tower braces. These are from Ramped Customs. Not a particularly easy to make part. There is a bit of a fluff around to fit them and a fair bit of welding required. So I'm going to go ahead and install them now, obviously for both sides. Possibly you're wondering why at the front and not the rear. Rear coil towers are very different to the Patrol design, and they're basically in between 2 cross members, which you can see here. Alrighty, so we've just put the coil towers on. I had Stacey helping me out, which was a massive help. He's really good at metal manipulation, which is exactly what you need for these. So there's definitely some gaps to fill. What we had to do was slice about 10 mil out of it, and that's just because the radius was too big and we would have just been filling too much. So this is just tacked at the moment. What we're doing, and maybe you'll be able to see from the time lapses, doing hot tacks and then banging them in. So this is pretty good. Like, there's really not a whole lot of gap to fill, and I can definitely do it. So I'm going to go ahead and weld them off now. We've got the tower braces all installed now. They required a heap of manipulation, heap of welding, but yeah, really stoked with them. So on the chopping block today, we have this radiator mount. It also mounts a lot of other engine components, so it's a very important piece of bar. Now, one thing I've been thinking about the last 12 months is that it'd be really hard to pull a motor, you know, if I didn't have access to certain tools and just in general as well, because the car does sit pretty high. So I'm going to make it removable today. Now the plan is I've got some little welding tabs here, so I'm going to have to cut and shut, and it's going to be a bolt and unbolt radiator mount. So one of the things I really like about this style of radiator mount is it's basically an internal bull bar, so you don't have to run hoops at the front, and I personally don't like the look of hooped bars on the front of a 40, so I think this is a pretty good solution. So I guess by making it removable, we still get that all that good structural stuff, probably not quite as strong as if we were to weld it, but it's still going to be pretty strong. And then we can make it removable to, you know, to pull a motor and then work on the front of the car. So I think it's the move, and yeah, I'm gonna get cracking on it now. So these are the same principle as the slider plates that you've seen me mount on the chassis. So we've got two plates here, one's drilled and tapped. So plot twist, I just hacked this apart, and you can see here that this tube is flexed in a little bit, which means I don't think my guard mount's going to work. So what I'm going to do, redesign the bracket so it's got two bolts to avoid this flex, and then I'm going to bolt this guard up and use it as a sort of, I guess, a pseudo jig, and I'll do the same on the other side as well. And that's going to keep this hoop in exactly the right spot. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Alrighty, so this is V2 of this mount, so you can see here that this is a 2-bolt pattern. And I've actually put the guard on as well to jig it, so it's pulled the bar out. So we're going to make sure that this bar is in the right spot. So I'm going to go ahead and tack it all up right now. Okay, so I've welded this bottom one on. Pretty happy with it. I think it's going to do a pretty good job. I've also actually, while we're here, welded this one on, and it's yeah, it's nice and rigid and keeping in a good place. So all good news. I guess the bad news is that I have to notch out of this panel, and it's actually just come back from Bodywork. So Daz has done an absolutely fantastic job fixing this up. I'm so stoked with his work, and it pains me to cut into a freshly bodyworked panel. So this isn't painted yet. I'm not keeping it this greeny grey colour, but it has been worked on, and it's nice and smooth and ready for a lick of paint. So I have to do a little notch out of the bottom. It already has a notch, but I need to make it bigger. So it pains me to do this, but we just got to get it done. So the radiator mount is about to come off. I've just got to undo a couple more bolts and then I'll be able to take it off for the first time in 12 months. So that's exciting. It's going to make maintenance so much easier. The front end of the car's apart. Now, I was hoping to do the fuel system and show you before I had to strip it down, but I'm still waiting on a few bits in the mail. So it's pretty much there, and I've punched all the holes for fillers and stuff. But I guess, yeah, I'm just waiting on a few bits of plumbing, and a package is lost in the mail, and I just can't wait any longer. So I'm going to pull the rear end of the car apart, and we're going to get the chassis off to sandblasting. So the idea is today, literally everything off, all the flaps, all the alley, and then we're going to weld the checker plate on. We're going to do some plug welds from the top and then full pass the sides entirely. Alrighty, so I've marked out all the holes, used some string line, pretty much building houses now, and we just got to drill and we're going to spot them, and that's because I'm really afraid of it warping, and I think stitch welds from the underside are probably a bit more prone to warping. Forgot to mention that I'm welding the checker plate to the tray while it's still bolted to the chassis to avoid any distortion to the tray. But yeah, there's about 1 million holes to drill out, and I've got my axis hatch marked out here, so we're going to go ahead and do that now. So there you have it, all the tray and rear end accessories are off, so I'm gonna weld off. So there are a heap of welds that I haven't had a chance to do previously, like in here on the inside of the tray mount and some of the downs as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and weld it all off. Weld on cable tie mounts. I'm just going to put them everywhere on the chassis rails and on the bottom of the tray as well, so I can yeah, just cable tie cables and obviously and that sort of stuff. All welded off now, and we're going to drop the diffs and then flip the chassis over. got the chassis upside down. My GoPro ran out of battery, so apologies. It was quite an amusing time lapse. Would have been good. But I guess I've got to do a lot of weld off, in fact, and I've waited to do all the welds on the bottom because I knew I was going to flip it upside down, and I hate welding upside down. And I've also got to weld on my water tank brackets for the strap. So there's something I got laser and folded previously, and I've just got to weld them off, and then I can make some stainless steel straps when we're reassembling it all. So a lot of weld off, a lot of cleaning. You can see that the chassis still got mud from the previous owner. So yeah, we're getting towards the end of it though. It's just a good couple of hours here. All the welds are now complete on the underside. Everything's welded on that needs to be. Every single thing is removed and we are ready for paint. Just kidding, we're getting this thing blasted. There are a lot of logistics to make a project like this happen, and I'm really thankful I've got good neighbours, so shout out to George for lending me his trailer, and shout out to all my neighbours to help me load it on. Wouldn't have been possible without them. Hope you enjoyed that episode, guys. If you want to see more of the build, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and drop me a comment. Let me know what you think. Cheers.